Today we're going to be making my favorite fudgy brownie recipe that uses freshly milled flour. It's a favorite in our household. My husband is very picky about brownies, and these have been his favorite so far. So let's get going. For this recipe, I used soft white wheat berries, and they really had a nice mild flavor that just worked perfect for this recipe. If you're new to using whole grains or specifically fresh milled flour, you may have already begun to notice that it can sometimes make your baked goods more dense, and it has a harder time with gluten development. That is why it is so perfect for brownies. We really don't mind if our brownies are dense and fudgy and lack gluten development. In fact, it can create an even better brownie. So in this case, we're not just using the fresh milled flour for the nutritional benefits, we're really using it as an ingredient to help our recipe be as delicious as possible. This recipe calls for a half a teaspoon baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon baking soda, a half a teaspoon salt, a half a cup of Dutch processed cocoa, and then our half cup of freshly milled flour. So I definitely recommend getting a Dutch processed cocoa. This recipe is primarily liquid ingredients, and you have the same amount of cocoa in this as you do freshly milled flour, so you want to make sure you're using a high quality cocoa. It's one of those things that I invest money in. I use a lot of ingredients from Aldi's, but this is one that I order special, and you can find this at your local Walmart or Meijer, and you can also order it on Amazon. Be sure when you're dealing with dry ingredients to always make sure that they're properly distributed throughout. So you want to really whisk in that baking soda and baking powder. And if you have not started baking with a kitchen scale, I don't know how you do it because my kitchen scale died halfway through this recipe. And so I had to start measuring ingredients, and it's just so much more of a hassle. You have to get out so many more measuring cups and spoons and different things. So this is me doing it the old-fashioned way. If you don't know how to measure brown sugar, you do want to make sure it's packed in and then level it off. Coffee, it pairs so well with chocolate, so I try to add at least 2 tablespoons of coffee into most of my chocolate recipes. For this video, I used butter straight from the fridge, so it was cold. I'm just going to show you what it looks like for each 30-second interval that I warmed it in the microwave. So it wasn't quite ready after the first 30 seconds, so I poured myself a cup of that coffee I made. So this is it after the second 30 seconds, and it's still not quite there. So we're actually going to give it another 30 seconds, but first we're going to make sure that the heat is evenly distributed in there. And you can definitely do this in a saucepan over your oven. I just like it to be easy, and I stick it in the microwave. So this is it after that last burst of 30 seconds, and it is perfect. You can see that it's kind of shiny, and it just mixes together perfectly. And we're going to let this sit for a little bit to let it cool so that we can add our eggs without our eggs scrambling under the heat of the melted butter. So we're going to add our eggs in to our liquid ingredients and then make sure that they're fully incorporated. Once you have your eggs fully whisked into your wet ingredients, you can go ahead and add your dry ingredients. And then I always use a Dutch whisk when I'm making something that I don't want to add too much gluten development to. Your gluten development starts to form as soon as your flour hits your wet ingredients, and I want to just be very wary of not over mixing this. So once I start to see my dry ingredients start to soak up my wet ingredients, that's when I stop and I add in my chocolate chips. I don't wait until everything's fully mixed, because I don't want to have to overmix in order for my chocolate chips to be fully incorporated. And so I fully mix it once my chocolate chips are added into it. I actually learned this trick with a parchment from someone who was making muffins and they didn't have liners. They simply cut the corners of the paper so that it would fit well down into a deeper dish. So what I'm going to do is I do grease my pan first, and then I square up my parchment. I actually buy sheets of parchment, which is kind of a splurge. It is more expensive to buy sheets than it is a roll, but it is so worth it. I love to bake, so I love being able to just pull out a sheet of parchment that perfectly fits my sheet pan. But for this case, I had to do a little bit of cutting. I cut the corners so that they nicely fit down into my pan. And I am using an 8x8 baking dish. So if yours look a little bit thinner, it could be because you're using a 9x9. That is a pretty common size. If you're doing 9x13, you could definitely double this recipe and just have really nice thick brownies. But do note that it will be a longer bake time. The key to getting a fudgy brownie is to remember that you're not baking a cake and you're not baking muffins. So where with a cake, you want to do something like the toothpick test, where you stick the toothpick in and if it comes out clean, then you know it's done. You don't really want to do that with brownies because you're wanting more of a fudgy consistency. And if you are someone that likes a cakey brownie, then yes, you can do the toothpick test. But if you're someone who's trying to get a fudgy brownie, then instead the best way to do it is really to use a Thermapen and make sure you're getting it to the proper internal temperature for brownies. And you can even learn for your own taste what that is. So when it hits that temperature, you know, that's when I can take it out. And even though it might be even jiggly still, you know that as it cools, it's gonna solidify. All those ingredients are gonna re-solidify and it's gonna create that fudgy taste. So brownies don't have a ton of flour in them or dry ingredients. They're mostly a lot of butter and wet ingredients. So those ingredients tend to stay liquidy at high temperatures. But as soon as you get them out and you let them cool completely or close to completely, they're going to cause a really nice fudgy solid consistency. So that is the key to these fudgy brownies. After about 35 to 45 minutes, depending on your oven, go ahead and check your brownies. You can either get them to an internal temperature of around 200, or you can do the toothpick test, but instead of checking to see if it comes out clean, you want it to have some moist crumbs on it. So here are our brownies. They're beautiful. I'm being patient. I want to cut into them so bad. They have a beautiful shiny top, and I try to get them to 200 degrees internal temperature because that's usually how I like it. And that is so beautiful. I can't wait to cut into them. If you enjoyed this video and are looking for more content like this, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. And if you're looking for more recipes, go ahead and check out theflowerburnhomestead.com. Thanks for watching.